Oh, yes, my people, you're welcome back to African Colonization TV and Biafran History. Here we'll give you everything happens around the world, Nigeria, and things happening in Biafra land. So, according to the headline, it says, North on fire as American evacuates its citizen out of Nigeria over increase of insecurity in Nigeria. The increase of insecurity that is happening in Nigeria this time, it is something that it is now getting out of hand to the extent that the American government recently we saw them shut down their embassy, and before you know, they start evacuating their citizens out of Nigeria. In fact, in this video, you are going to see everything by yourself, and you are going to hear everything the way everything is going. Don't skip any part of it. Try to watch to the end so that for you to understand the way things is happening in this country. In fact, a lot is happening. As you can see, recently, just yesterday, according to Tinubu, they say that they have released the terrorist sponsors in Nigeria, and you all have been seeing the name and some of the name that they say that they are the one that is sponsoring the terrorists. But the main people that is sponsoring that the U.S. government is expecting Tinubu to add into it, they are not adding it. And the thing that they want the Nigerian government to do, they are not doing it. Some of the names that the U.S. government list out last month, or concerning the people that is sponsoring terrorists, to date, the Nigerian government, they are not, in fact, they have not even do anything about that list. But now they have now listed a different one to the people and start claiming that anybody that is that deny Nigeria as a country, that the person, they should retrieve the person visa and a lot of things. In fact, don't skip any part of it. You try to watch it to the end for you to understand things going on in Nigeria and how Nigeria is holding and how everything is happening, because a lot is going on. So as about to watch, like, subscribe, and share it for everyone to see what is happening.
Time to take a look at news stories making headlines around the globe. First off, the Defense Headquarters say troops of the 29 Task Force Brigade in Operation Hadinkai successfully repelled coordinated terrorist attack on their location at the brigade headquarters in Benishek, Borno State. The attack occurred in the early hours of Thursday as insurgents attempted to breach the defensive perimeter of the military installation. However, the troops led by the Commander 29 Brigade, Brigadier General Oseni Brahima, responded with exceptional courage and forcing the terrorists to retreat. Regrettably, the military also confirms the loss of a few brave and gallant soldiers who paid the supreme price in the line of duty. The High Command honors their heroism, sacrifice, and unwavering commitment to the defense of the nation while extending its deepest condolences to their families and loved ones. Meanwhile, President Bola Tinubu has expressed deep sadness over the loss of the brave soldiers of the 29 Task Force Brigade Operation Hadinkai, who died in a coordinated terrorist attack on their camp in Benishek, Borno State. The president also expressed heartfelt condolences to the military and the families of the soldiers, urging them to take heart in the face of the unfortunate loss. Tinubu praised the courage and heroism of the soldiers who fought valiantly to repel the terrorists and ensure that Boko Haram could not overrun the communities the soldiers protect. While mourning the death of the gallant soldiers, President Tinubu urged the leadership of the armed forces and all soldiers on the front line not to be discouraged, but to draw strength from the nation's deep appreciation for their sacrifices. The Minister of Defense, Christopher Musa, has tasked security agencies and the armed forces of Nigeria to ramp up its intelligence network to boost military counterinsurgency operations across the country. General Musa gave the charge when he met with the heads of intelligence of Nigeria's security agencies and the armed forces. General Musa identified intelligence as a critical factor in the fight against insecurity and charged the security agencies to build capacity to develop human intelligence. He also calls for joint operations between all security agencies.
So whatever intelligence we can gather from everywhere, let's harness them together, make it operational so that we can enhance the capacity of our troops that are out there in the field. And in essence, that's why I brought you. So firstly, it's for us to know ourselves. Two, is to now build up this capacity together. And three, to make sure that it counts out there in the field. Asymmetric warfare is a warfare of intelligence. If you don't have intelligence, you are going to be blind. It's not like the conventional one that you are seeing everybody. This one, the enemy is not identified. That person that you think is your friend that is close to you might just be the person that is also planning for you. So that's where I think it's important. And then we look at means and ways that we can enhance these aspects, especially building up our human intelligence and making sure that Nigerians understand that they too have a role to play in passing this information as quickly, as efficient as possible so that actions could be taken as quickly as possible.
Moving on, the United States has ordered the evacuation of non-essential staff and families from its embassy in Abuja over worsening security concerns. As such, the embassy is closed for visa appointments, but operations continue at the consulate in Lagos. Washington has also raised its travel advisory on Nigeria to level 3, urging citizens to reconsider travel. At the same time, concerns are being raised over Nigeria's electoral integrity ahead of future polls. Arise correspondent Godfrey Eshemoge reports.
The United States has expanded its travel warning, placing 23 Nigerian states under level 4, which is do not travel. New additions include Plateau, Jigawa, Kwara, Niger, and Taraba states. U.S. officials cite widespread risks, including crime, terrorism, kidnapping, banditry, civil unrest, and limited healthcare access. Americans are considered high-value targets for ransom kidnappings. The advisory also warns of unpredictable terrorist attacks and sudden military operations, particularly across northern Nigeria, making it one of the strongest warnings issued in recent years. Beyond security, Washington is raising fresh concerns about Nigeria's electoral process. A US-based firm, Von Barton Montague York, says the Independent National Electoral Commission (INEC) remains vulnerable to manipulation despite international support. The firm references the disputed 2023 general elections and warns that similar patterns could re-emerge. It adds that U.S. congressional staff are expected to brief lawmakers and the National Security Council on the situation. The report contrasts former responses with expectations of a tougher stance under President Donald Trump, suggesting the U.S. may take a more proactive approach if electoral credibility is undermined. It also indicates that global Magnitsky sanctions could be recommended against politicians or electoral officials found guilty of vote rigging, including asset freezes, financial restrictions, and travel bans affecting them and their families. Godfrey Eshemoge, Arise News.
But in a swift reaction, the federal government has reassured Nigerians and the international community of the country's stability and safety following a recent advisory by the United States authorizing the departure of non-emergency personnel from its embassy in Abuja. Minister of Information, Mohammed Idris, describes the U.S. decision as a routine precaution guided by internal protocols, which does not reflect the country's situation. The minister says while there are isolated security challenges in Nigeria, there is no breakdown of law and order, noting that the country remains stable. He urged international partners to engage in balanced and up-to-date reporting that reflects the progress being made in the security sector.
Nigeria is not on the brink of any collapse. We have heard these stories over and over and over again. Those who are peddling these stories are also preparing how to live in Nigeria, preparing how to grow their businesses, grow their formations. You cannot have a country that is about to collapse and you are there planning on how to live within it. I think that we need to rethink how we make these statements. What do you think others from outside this country will think of us if all the time we project our country as a country that is about to collapse? We've seen and heard this rhetoric over and over again.
Police Command has dismissed as false a viral social media claim alleging that 488 Boko Haram members were recently arrested in the state, warning residents against the spread of misinformation capable of triggering panic. In a statement, the command clarified that the video being circulated alongside the claim was an old broadcast recorded over 11 years ago and does not reflect the current security situation in Abia State. The statement was signed by the Police Public Relations Officer, DSP Maureen Chinaka, on behalf of the Commissioner of Police. The police described the report as misleading and deliberately designed to incite fear and unrest among members of the public. Moving on, the David Mark-led faction of the African Democratic Congress, ADC, has dragged INEC to the Federal High Court in Abuja, demanding the reversal of its decision to remove the party's leadership from its records. INEC delisted Senator David Mark as national chairman and Rauf Aregbesola as national secretary on April 1. Mark is now seeking a mandatory injunction from Justice Emeka Nwite to compel INEC to immediately restore the full National Working Committee details pending the determination of the suit. Mark also asks the court to set aside INEC's refusal to monitor the ADC's congresses and convention. It further seeks to restrain INEC from recognizing any rival leadership. The suit is a direct response to the Court of Appeals judgment of March 12 in a case filed by Nafiu Bala Gombe. Right, a number of stories this morning, Vimba, a very sad one, of course, with Brigadier General Oseni Brima. So many glowing words have been spoken about his time in service to the country and the people of Nigeria. And beyond this, the president's response to the unfortunate killings of our servicemen, as well as the other stories this morning.
Yes, several stories this morning. Let me start with sort of a low-hanging fruit before I focus on what I believe is the most important story of the day, which is the demise of Brigadier General Oseni Omo Brima and other officers. I want to start with the evacuation of the family members of U.S. officials and notices that have been issued and so forth, because I tap into lived experience from this one. I've lived in a war zone before, and I remember at that time we were students at an international school, and sometimes, usually almost once a quarter, by the way, this is in former Yugoslavia, during both the Bosnia-Herzegovina crisis and the Kosovo crisis. Once a quarter, you would get to school and you'd find that all the American students were absent. You'd find out what happened. They say they have evacuated. Once a quarter, without fail, you would find that the Americans have been evacuated out. Nothing would happen. They would still come back and resume, but it's because of excessive caution. I like that in his report, Godfrey Oshiomoge made reference to the fact that American citizens are high-value targets when there's uncertainty in a country. So I say this to say, yes, there might be threats, there might be information around insecurity, but not to over-amplify what it means when Americans evacuate their kin from the nation. Because from my lived experience, it was only on one occasion, the final occasion that everybody evacuated, that bombs started dropping on Serbia. And I quote my father on this, who was the head of the Zimbabwean mission to Yugoslavia, and he said that when the Canadians and the British start evacuating, then you should pay attention. But for now, this is just a caution being exercised by Americans, as we've seen that they leave no man behind, as we saw what they did with the air officer in Iran. So they don't want to risk ever putting their citizens in that situation. All right, now let's focus on the heinous and barbaric attacks that took place yesterday in Beni Sheikh in Borno State. Now, the 29 task force was established in 2015 under President Buhari, and it's said to be one of the most strategic and importantly placed brigades because of its proximity to some of the various bases. Now, what we know is that ISWAP, and not just ISWAP, but all IS-related terror agencies, terror organizations, especially those operating in Africa, have been conducting what is called a Burn the Camp campaign. We've seen the same campaign campaign in IS Mozambique, where they intentionally target military bases. Now, what does this signal to us? It signals a number of things, but one of the most key things that it signals is the fact that it may no longer be as easy to smuggle supplies and weapons from outside of the country as it used to be. And so what they do is they attack these military bases, they loot them, they take weapons, they take food, they take so many things to keep them sustained. So in this light, security experts are saying, well, this is an indicator that they're feeling the pinch of the attacks and that are being made, the war being waged against them. Also, we recall the fact that we now have two major operations that are underway that are targeting terrorism. We have Operation Savannah Shield and, of course, Operation Hadinkai. Operation Savannah Shield goes straight to the ground. It goes straight to the bases of the terrorist organizations, meaning that aside from targeting urban cells, we see them going into the forests where they're hiding out and they're being repelled from there. Now, Beni Sheikh itself is said to be on the route from Maiduguri to Damaturi, and because of that, civilians were also killed because there's a routine road closure on that express, and so many people stop by in Beni Sheikh for the night. So it was a very unfortunate and terrible event. Now, the late Brigadier General, is said to have been killed in combat because he was trying to start his armored vehicle and it failed to start as they opened fire on him. Now, we don't know whether it was a result of the fire that had been opened on him or what failure happened to that bulletproof vehicle, but it shows the caliber of officer that he is, that he died on the front lines in combat, and it shows the nature of the type of aggression, of asymmetric warfare that we're dealing with here. Now, let's talk about some of the things that have arisen from this that continue to be trends. Now, if these terrorist groups are still able to get to these huge military camps, because this is not an isolated incident, excuse me, there were simultaneous attacks in Pulka and in Gandu. In Pulka, it's particularly tragic because we know that those who had their homes ransacked in Goshe had actually moved to Pulka in their thousands for safe space, and now the terrorists have located them in that area as well. So it's a double jeopardy in that sense. Now, we're saying that, have the military been able to win the hearts and minds of the communities? Because can such an attack happen without some sort of community complicity? And this takes us to some of the ideological doctrines around your ISWAP and your Boko Harams, who have now started working collaboratively. Because these are people who are there to undermine state presence, and they're there to present themselves as an alternative authority. They are trying to take territory. And we know that their agenda is to access the sea for their terrorist agendas. So we're now seeing this heightened aggression where they're trying to take territory, and we see that it's now a territorial threat because they are ransacking strategic bases that are supposed to defend from the front lines those who are most vulnerable in these most vulnerable areas. So there's the community. Then the question is there sufficient governance? Because the other thing is, with ISWAP, we see that ISWAP tried to pose themselves as an alternative authority. It's quite different from the original Boko Haram philosophy, where it was more about psychological indoctrination. ISWAP want territory. That's their doctrine. And that's what they're doing here. Now, the question is, can they do so if sufficient governance is presented in those areas where the war economy is not attractive to the residents of those communities? And now, as we talk about sufficient governance, people will say, well, these are things that spring up before elections. Why do they spring up before elections? I read a very compelling analysis that said, well, because during elections, we tend to turn away from governance and focus on campaigning. So these are some of the confluences that are happening between a spike in insecurity, pre-election periods, and we have seen this before. But what is unfortunate is that we're losing our best and our brightest. Brigadier General Oseni Brahima is one who so many people, as Ayo said, have spoken glowingly about. I've read so many tributes about him, from his time as a prefect and even to his relationship with his twin brother, and what a gentleman he was. So this is truly heartbreaking to see that our best and our brightest, those who are loyal to this country and who are fighting for us to be able to go to sleep peacefully at night, are now being sacrificed, paying the ultimate price. And we pray that their souls may rest in peace, and we condole with their families and these communities who have lost several people. Now, as I round up, let me round up with David, Mark, and INEC. Throughout this week, we've been saying, well, the place that the political parties or any aggrieved parties can receive respite is the courts. Now, the judiciary is back in focus, because as much as we say go to courts, we all know the controversy that has surrounded these court judgments. I was very happy with some of the comments made by our guest yesterday, the lawyer Opatola Victor, I believe his name was Opatola Victor. And he said that maybe it's time for the Supreme Court to issue us some very clear guidelines as to what is internal party affairs and what is not. Because until that happens, every issue is taken to the court, wasting the court's precious time in that. Issues that should be resolved internally. And in some instances, we hear the court continuing to reinstate the fact that we do not meddle in internal party affairs. In some instances, we see injunctions, we see various actions being taken that lead people to ask, well, can the court take such actions? We've seen it with PDP. We've seen it with Labour Party. There's also the issue of vague rulings. So as this issue is being taken back into the judiciary, we pray that whatever the outcome is will be spelt out in very simple English that will be easily interpreted by somebody who is just learning the language. Number two, we pray that this thing that has been described as the triangle of compromise to capture elections between the judiciary, between INEC, the electoral commissioner, and the security forces, we pray that we can see a break in these organizations losing their credibility and people not having trust that these institutions have the capacity and the will to ensure that they can deliver credible, free and fair elections to Nigerians. Because I end with the words of Professor Joash Amupitan, chairman of INEC, who himself said that he intends to deliver an election to Nigerians where the winner will know that they're the winner, the loser will congratulate the winner. That is the election we're looking forward to this year. Indeed. Thank you very much, Wimbai.
Okay, let me deal with the ADC matter first. What the ADC, the David Mark-led group, has done is to go and institute a new suit in the Court of Justice Emeka Nwite. And I think that that complicates the process. And I do not know what advice they received from their lawyers. The Court of Appeal, in treating that matter, was very clear. It said there is a pending suit at the Federal High Court level in Abuja, and that you have to go back to that suit. Because that particular case, Nafiu Bala versus ADC and 4 others, which was instituted on September 2, 2025, had on September 4, 2025, ex parte motion and motion on notice. The court ignored the motion ex parte and dealt with the motion on notice and directed that the parties involved, that is the other party, the David Mark party and the 3 others, should be put on notice. Upon which the David Mark group went straight to file an appeal, ignoring that substantive fundamental issue, which is the subject matter of the dispute that the Court of Appeal, in its ruling of March 12, tried to preserve. Now, the Court of Appeal then directed you go back to that case and resolve it. You can't just jump and come and raise an objection, at the level of the Court of Appeal. But this suit, as reported, I emphasize that, it's not following the directive of the Court of Appeal. 2 options are available to the ADC group, in my view. They could have gone to the Supreme Court to challenge the ruling of the Court of Appeal. The Court of Appeal now having been rendered the functus officio in the matter. Or they could just have gone back to the Federal High Court and follow the directive of the Court of Appeal to return to that original suit. But they filed a new suit now, asking that the INEC directive be set aside. They've also asked that they should be recognized. INEC should not obstruct them in any particular manner. Now, that's not the real substance as defined by the Court of Appeal. However, what is interesting here is that, okay, they followed our regular advice on this table that the place to resolve the conflict is not on the streets. It's not through self-help. It is through the courts of law. 2, they have also done the right thing by asking for accelerated hearing. We had said on this same table that, they can file an application of urgency. However, the subject matter may be a source of controversy. But I assume that the David Mark-led group is following the advice of his counsel. How it is resolved subsequently without leading to further complications remains to be seen. Those, in my view, are the issues. Second, as for the United States offering a travel advisory. Now, this came from Washington. Now, governments offer travel advisory when they see that the interests of their citizens are threatened in particular locations, or their citizens could be put at risk. Nigeria also has had calls in the past to issue, travel advisories, even if, under retaliatory, reciprocal, circumstances. So this time around, what we see here is that I don't even think that the United States is telling us everything that we should know. They have their men on the ground. There is a strategic military cooperation between Washington and Abuja. They have over 200 men. They have AFRICOM having access all over the place. The cooperation is about surveillance. It's about intelligence. Is there something they know that we do not know? Or that they are sharing or not sharing with the Nigerian government? That's number one. Number 2 is that what we see is a difference between strategic military cooperation and the reality that we live. Because, for since about December, there has been an escalation in the security situation in Nigeria, with 2 suicide bombings in Maiduguri, in the northeast, and then subsequently we've seen a spread of violence from Kaduna to from Plateau to Kaduna State to Kebbi to Katsina to Nasarawa and also to Kwara. So really, when the Americans speak about the deteriorating security situation, they probably, we seem to have a strong point, because we too, living within that reality, can attest to that. What they have done is to shut down the Abuja embassy. The consular office in Lagos is still open. Visa applications have been suspended in Abuja. In the consular office in Lagos, we're told that this can still continue. Now, the next major point is the response by the Nigerian government. The Nigerian government says, well, this is not a big problem. Nigeria is still a safe place. No, the Americans are not saying that the whole of Nigeria is not safe. They singled out 23 states where the security alert level for Americans has been moved up to level 4. The other states out of the 23 states are at level 3, which is the country level that they are determined before now. So you find states like Plateau, Benue, Kebbi, Katsina, Kwara, and the traditional trouble zones, Borno and Yobe, included in that list. Now, the problem here is that the Nigerian government says this is not true. Well, how do they know what is true or what is not true? Just issuing press statement for the purpose of being seen to be talking. Now, this is why we have been saying that Nigeria needed to have moved fast on the appointment of ambassadors. As we speak, there's nobody of real weight in Washington to engage the Americans. You are just issuing press statement. Most of our missions abroad, apart from the ambassadors that have been rejected, even the ones that will be accepted, they have not resumed. They have not assumed in their office, in their various posts. So this is the price we pay. And what is the big price that we pay? Businesses will likely suffer from this because we're always asking for investors. We're always, when the Americans have issued travel advice and they say 23 states have been rated at level 4. If you are a businessman and you are doing risk assessment of a country, of course, you may want to exercise caution. But I think that the Nigerian government, contributed to all of this by its tardiness in terms of the early appointment of ambassadors, many of whom are here have also been rejected. Maybe it's only today or before the end of this week that our ambassador to France will go and report for duty. And yet, Nigeria is in election season already. Now, as for the crisis in Beni Sheikh, I think it's very unfortunate. I think it's very embarrassing. The president has issued the usual statement: do not despair, the military. Do not be discouraged. The people that died, they are our heroes, and the media should support them. We always support the armed forces of Nigeria because we know the weight of the sacrifice that they make, the gallantry of the officers, but there are more questions than answers. The military defense headquarters, I think General Onoja, Michael Onoja, I think that's his name, he has released a statement saying that, look, the media should beware of misinformation. But the evidence of our eyes that we can see also shows certain omissions. Now, there was a video that has been in circulation, the defense headquarters has not denied it, showing what they call a military base, a military command. It looks like an unprotected, open space, no reinforcement, no protection, in the middle of nowhere, 75 kilometers outside Maiduguri, Beni Sheikh, the place is called. And then at the end of the day, these terrorists, they attacked that open, ungoverned space, and they killed General Oseni Omo Brahimo, the second general to be killed between December and now. In December, it was General Uba who was killed. Was it December or November? Now, second general has also been killed in this war. And it's not only generals that lose their lives. 18 soldiers were killed in that assault. That ambush against a military command of the Nigerian military. A brigade commander will have ordinarily under him about 2,500 to 3,000 soldiers. Now, even if it was a brigade headquarters, he will have minimum about 100 to 300 soldiers. So whether it was a defense, a brigade headquarters, or it was a brigade command with the full complement, the bandits overran the entire formation. Now, APCs, in a normal brigade command, they should have about 150 to 300 armored personnel carriers. If it is, just a brigade headquarters in the theater of war, they will have at least up to about 15 to 30. And yet, they were overwhelmed. In fact, they are saying misinformation. Some media outlets have reported that General Brahimo, tried to rally the troops and tried to get an APC moving. The APC, they said, was in a state of disrepair. It was not working. So these are questions that the military headquarters, defense headquarters, will still have to answer to. Why was the place not reinforced? Why was it not in a place of preparedness for emergency? Why, as has been alleged by some media platforms, would the APC not work? How many APCs, armored personnel carriers, do they have in that location? So what you find is that these, terrorists, they are getting more and more confident. And I think in the report by Godfrey, he was saying some groups are also complaining about the group that he mentioned in that report. That's the group that is doing PR for Waziri Adamawa, Atiku Abubakar. Now we also have to worry about, in this build-up to election, people cannot stay outside, hire people outside with 1.2 billion and be spreading negative narrative that will compromise the integrity of Nigeria. Because what we will lose in the long run will affect all of us. So we must separate between national interest and partisan interest, which seems to be overriding every other consideration.
Oh yes. Very, very shocking. You all have been seeing how everything is going, the news and how the whole thing is coming. It is a very shocking and it's very, very shocking something happening in the country. When something like this is happening, the worst part of it is that the Nigerian government, they used to deny everything and they used to claim that nothing is happening. No matter whatever that happened in the country, they will tell you that everything is okay. I don't know the time it will be, then the government will accept that Nigeria is not safe. I don't know. No matter whatever people comes out to say, they would claim that no, it is not truth. It is not truth. Even though when the top soldiers, the top ranks in military is falling every day, then they will still tell you that everything is okay. Everything is okay. And that is why you see Nigeria is not moving. Any country that lies in this denial, in these lies, and in this issue of claiming that the country is safe, the country will keep on bleeding day by day. The reason why Nigeria is not moving is because of this. The government already they will see themselves that they are not doing it right, and the people that is advising the president or that is advising them, that is claim that they are the leaders, they will not be advising them the thing they need to see or the thing that is happening, but they will be advising them, telling them that everywhere is okay, people is even dancing for you. In fact, everybody is rejoicing. The hunger is the hunger is in the country, it has finished. Then the security is everywhere, so everything is moving the way it is. But the outside, those that is in the outside of the country, that is looking everything the way everything is happening, is telling you what is happening in your own country, and you are claiming and saying that it is not truth. And that is it in the country of Nigeria. That is what everybody is facing in the country. Well, I would like to recommend me what do you think about the whole thing happening in Nigeria. Like, subscribe, and make sure you share it for everyone to see what is going on. So thank you for watching.